start the official proceedings, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on Jara country, of which the members and elders of the Jara community and their forebears have been custodians for many centuries and have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. Council meetings are audio and video recorded and are made available to the public via electronic media, including YouTube. So we do a little bit of administrivia first, and then we'll open it up for submissions and for public questions. So, councillors, we have Councillor Dave Petrusma as an apology. Do I have any declarations of interest or conflicts of interest? No. Minutes of the last meeting, councillors, we have a recommendation.
Yes, Mayor, I'll move the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Mount Alexander Shire Council held on the 16th of July 2019 be confirmed.
Thank you. Seconded. Any objections? No. That being the case, I declare it carried. Can I just do a sound check? Can you hear us up the back? You can. Okay. Thank you. So, councillors, I need to have a motion to suspend standing orders. Councillor Neiman, Councillor Cordy, thank you. The first people we're going to hear are those people who wish to present and consider. So it's on the proposed leasing of Etty Street campus and the Castlemaine Secondary College. So we have two proposed speakers. Ms. Stone, are you available to speak? Oh, yeah. Thank you. If you could, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And our normal standards of respect to each other apply, and confidentiality around anything that that is about confidential business or personal business is not accepted. We will cut you off at 3 minutes, so if that's okay. So we'll say, sorry, that's it, and we're not being rude, that's just the local laws.
Okay, so I'll base what I'm going to say on the letter that I've submitted. Just want to sort of speak it out loud publicly. I'm speaking on behalf of Castlemaine Theatre Company to express our support for the proposal for the council to enter into a lease with the Department of Education and Training for a portion of the Secondary College Etty Street campus and the sublease of that property to Workspace Australia and Castlemaine Rod Centre for use for community and educational purposes. And this is the point, I suppose, that I want to emphasise. We feel that this building is a significant asset to the Castlemaine community and that it should be available for the community to access. CTC has had an ongoing interest in this proposal in its various forms since 2016, and there have been many interruptions and twists and turns as the project has evolved, but the core vision, which was established by the original steering committee, was that the campus be utilised to provide opportunities for multi-generational access to alternative forms of education, a place for the community to meet, work on projects, support each other, learn and move forward together. And we feel that this lease that's been proposed is the most effective way to maintain this situation, to maintain this access for the community. So we've been from the outset looking to occupy the drama studio and 4 adjacent rooms for storage space in the old engineering block, and this would hopefully provide the company with a long-term or reasonably long-term home, which is something that we have been in desperate need of since being moved out of the Chewton Senior Citizens Centre in 2011. We are celebrating our 60th birthday this year. We're extremely we're extremely vulnerable organisation that we have been serving the community for many generations, and we desperately need a place to keep all our property in one place, to keep it well maintained, to keep it well organised, and to make it more available for the community. If we could maintain all our items in a good way, then we could make them available for hire. We could make them just generally our records and our presence in the community would be much more accessible, and that's really what we want. And we want to take the pressure off all our committee members who have large set items and all sorts of things in garages all over town, as I'm sure you can imagine. So yes, that's basically it. We could having an office space would enable us to have room for our archives, printer, computer in one location, making it much more easy for us to track volunteer hours. Is that my 3 minutes?
It goes really quickly.
We just want to make sure that the rooms that are available, we hope obviously that Workspace and Hot Rod Centre will make full use of the property, but we also really want to ensure that it's still available for community use where it can
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay.
Do you have a question?
Oh, sorry, did you?
Third purpose is it will be available for other community.
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
Sorry, I'm a little bit croaky. I just clarify, it will be available for other community groups. Yeah.
So, and Mayor, probably worth just noting for the people in the audience, just to reiterate that tonight's not a decision-making forum for the councillors. It's to allow people like Kate to speak to their submissions as she has. The report that you'll consider formally will go to the next council meeting, and that will include clarification about those matters. But what I can say is the proposed agreements that will be for your consideration will be that a minimum of 3% of the floor space available in the whole of the site that you would be taking on if you accepted would be made available for community use for similar rates to what people can use council facilities for at the moment. That's the broad principle.
And that's the main issue, is the accessibility, that it's actually at an affordable rate for community not-for-profit organisations.
Yes.
We want to make sure that's understood.
So does that answer?
Yeah.
That answer your question? Thank you very much, Kate. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chris Cook. Chris here. Oh, you are. Thank you.
Thank you. There you go.
Good, thank you.
So, my name is Chris Cook. I'm on the elected board of the Castlemaine Childcare Cooperative, also known as Carinya. So, we're an early childcare education centre from 0 to 5 years, encompassing a kinder program. And we also manage about 21 family daycare centres around Castlemaine. Our main centre is on Templeton Street there, and it is long day care, and it has 60 places. And we're quite proud of what we've achieved over this, our 40th year, not quite 60, but 40 years. And it's achieved the highest quality standard for early education centres nationally, and the highest in Castlemaine. So, having some experience with early childhood management, we just thought we'd inform the council and look at the opportunity potentially that the high school provides, the old high school campus provides. There's a high demand for long day care, certainly far more than Carinya can handle. We have a significant waiting list, and people essentially don't get in, they give up quite early. There's 2 other long daycare centres in Castlemaine, and they're near or at capacity. And there's also a number of family daycare centres that are also near or at capacity around Castlemaine. So obviously with population growth, that's going to exacerbate the demand for these services. So when we saw the opportunity in advertised to comment on the use of that facility as a potential community hub, we hadn't been involved at all, hadn't known that there was an opportunity to participate in the planning of that facility. Obviously other people had. So we really just here to register our interest and recognise the need for additional facilities for early childcare. And you know, on the surface, obviously it's a high school. It has, you know, great alignment with you know, early education and childcare, a high school. And in particular, its particular location is sort of geographically separate from the other areas, other facilities, and it's close to bushland. And I think what we've noticed is a growing demand and a growing benefit of having bush kinder programs, getting kids out into the bush rather than in smaller enclosed spaces. And we would love to build and develop a bush kinder program in particular, but as well as a enclosed long daycare centre. Now that has very specific requirements, and since the advertisement we've had a look at that centre, and we've noticed that really there's only 2 buildings up there that would be suitable. One of them's outside the area; it's already managed by the Department of Education. The other one would be the cafeteria. But we need a lot of space rather than a little bit of space, so we need to really work on planning how that could be achieved. And we'd love to have a conversation about that in the future.
Thank you very much for that. And I'm just wondering, as an artist, is the early childhood, I've got the formal name of the group, but are they aware of this overcrowding or getting close to capacity?
Yes, there's a lot that we've done with the development of the early years plan, and there's a lot of collaboration that's going on for both 3 and 4-year-old kinder. We know that we're at capacity across the Shire. Through early years reform, there's also a big push and additional funding looking at the expansion of 3-year-old kinders and those programs. So yes, those networks would be aware that we're at capacity, particularly for long day care and after school care as well.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? No. So thank you very much for that. That's the end of the first part of public question time. Just to let you know, we have no concerns if anyone sneaks out at any time they want because they've heard what they need to hear. And just reiterating that we're not going to talk any further about the Etty Street tonight. That will come up next month. So just let you know that. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak about, just hold on a minute, I'm just getting a few things right. Thank you very much. You're almost where I want you to be in terms of putting up your hand. But is there anyone here who wishes to speak about a planning matter? So I can, is that two? Two at the back. Two at the back. In which case I might take the non-planning matter questions first, in which case. So who wishes to speak about a non-planning matter? And you do. And there's, so that's two again. Thank you. So I'm wondering if the lady in the front, thank you very much. If you could state your name and whether you represent yourself or anyone else, and then ask us the question you want to ask.
My name is Pamela Douglas, and I moved here in September 2001. And I bought some land at the end of Gramont Street. It's Sam Gramont, I think, was a mayor. And it's at the very end, it's next to bushland. And I moved a house from Bendigo onto my block of land, and there was a quite deep site cut, and that was like very obvious at the time. In fact, the excavator can almost cut away a hill, you know. Anyway, in recent times, I've noticed it's not. There's uranium type material under my house, and it's like they say the blue colour is the most toxic, but this is it's sort of yellow, and it's blue, and it's like a clear substance, like it's thick like water, but it's got a shine on it. And when I first moved here, one of the residents in Sawmill Road, she said a lot of the people around the area were getting sick, like it was a bad luck area to live, you know. And I mean, but I just dismissed it because I thought she's an old lady that just says things, you know, and I didn't take any notice. And anyway, so what it was, I've been trying to think about it, but the side cut was quite deep, and it's that orange rock, you know, that you find up in Rum Jungle or Kakadu. It's that type of rock, you know, and because I asked about it, and somebody said, oh, they used like that sort of substance to find gold, but I don't think so. I think it's that orange rock that there's gold in it, but there's also uranium, you know, because it's the same sort of rock that is up in the Northern Territory. And anyway, so you know, it was really distressing, and so even on Saturday morning, you know, it's like the fumes are coming up through underneath the house, and you know, I was getting pain in my nostrils and the back of my throat and in my eyes, you know, and so I don't think it's my responsibility to do something about it. I think like it's the Shire that has to do something about this problem, you know. The land was sold to me without a planning permit. So, and Brian Tunn at the time, who was the building inspector, you know, he said there's no problem with the planning permit, but there was a few suspicious things, you know, looking back now, like, it probably should never have got a planning permit, but it was, Brian issued the planning permit and the building permit, and it was fantastic to me. And anyway, so now, it's the Shire's responsibility to do something about this stuff that's underneath my house, you know, because as you know, others know around the area, you know, like years and years ago, she told me, you know, lots of people getting sick, and
Okay. So thank you very much for that, and I'm really sorry that that's been distressing you. I'm just wondering, I think our officers have been in contact with you about this?
No, I actually, I went to Robertson Hyatt. I tried to contact them. They didn't want to have anything to do with me, so I did legal aid. I tried to get...
No, I think our council officers have...
Oh, no.
Yeah, because they have been in contact with you, and I'm just wondering whether they could make contact with you again about this issue.
Well, I haven't received anything.
Mr. Taylor said he's written to you.
Mayor, there's been 2 letters sent to Ms Douglas in the last couple of weeks, but I think we could arrange for someone to hand deliver a copy and have a discussion about the issues.
Yeah.
If that would be...
my post office box has just changed. It's
that might be some of it.
PO Box 70. There's no postal delivery where I live.
So thank you very much, and I'm sorry that's causing you distress, and we will make contact again.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. Ms Sanders.
Joyce Sanders, retailer in Barker Street. The issue I want to ask about tonight relates to one I am already discussing with an officer in planning who's doing a lovely job, and I can't complain about that. So I'm not asking about that which is ongoing there. But I wanted to mention the broader picture and how it affects Castlemaine's economy, and basically ask councillors of long standing in the council if they might have any additional information on this historical issue. 15 years ago, a council officer came to my Barker Street property to show me the site of the old night cart track that runs along the backs of the shops in Barker Street from Templeton Street to Lyttleton Street. The track runs right through the Hub Garden, crosses my backyard, out the gate behind the Origini Cafe, and down past the art shop, and exits at the Amcal Chemist. Now, the officer told me that the 10-foot wide track belongs jointly to all the shop owners and cannot be sold or ceded to anyone without 100% consent. In this 15-year period, Council has allowed me to build a gate exiting onto this track and allowed the art shop owner to build a premise into his upstairs that's actually only accessible from that track at the rear. Now, rear access to buildings is a commonly valued right, and there is even a legal term which I've forgotten exactly, but something of right of long user or something like that. Now, recently the owner of the private parking lot behind these shops has decided to expand onto this night car track to increase the number of car parks that he can lease. Now, I won't go further into how or why he's done this. I only want to say how a change like this affects everyone else one way or another, because all the shopkeepers who used to park behind the shops are now unable to do this. And sadly, 5 of them have chosen to keep their cars in front in Barker Street, dashing out every hour to move their cars just in case the council is enforcing parking that day. So out of the 9 parking spaces we have, 5 are taken up all day by the shopkeepers doing this. I've taken up this case not because I'm affected directly, because I don't own a car, but because it affects businesses and their profitability, especially us non-eateries, much more so than the cafes. People have to eat, so they find parking in the next street to go to the cafes.
Thanks, Joyce.
But for us other shops, we are a bit in the middle. We want parking for our customers, and the customers will just keep on driving if they can't park. So I wanted to ask councillors if they have any local knowledge they can add about this historical access issue. I promise I'm fighting this for the
Thank
common
you.
good. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's an issue that you said our officers are handling at the moment, the particular issue, and you're pleased with how they're handling that. Whether we have historical knowledge about that particular Dunny Lane, is anyone, any councillor? I think you're drawing a blank on our personal knowledge there, so sorry about that.
Yeah.
But it is something, so Mr. Yusufovic, do you have a comment you'd like to make?
I'm happy to take that on notice and have a look at the documentation, because if it's been registered anywhere as a heritage item, we'll find it. But, yeah.
Thank you. At one stage I worked for the city of Port Phillip, and boy were there fights about the back lanes, so I do appreciate that. Thank you. Well, I think we're now moving to the planning objections, and I think we have 2 hands go up for that. Thank you. Just checking, are you objectors or applicants? Applicants? Both applicants. Okay, so please come forward. So state who you are and which planning permit it is.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Felicity Brown. I'm a town planning consultant here on behalf of the owners of 11 Union Street, Castlemaine, who have a current permit being considered tonight at agenda item 10.3 Eco 33. It's just a small request. Could we please delete the word colourblind from condition 1.10? I spoke to the planning officer, Carol and Harriet, last week, and she doesn't have a problem with us making this request. I made her aware that we were coming tonight. And my understanding is the only reason she specified colour-bond is because that is what the boundary fencing, the existing fencing is. The owners would prefer to construct it in a material that provides a bit better amenity for the courtyard. It's indoor blueboard material.
Okay, so can I just check, councillors, have you got that?
Page 78.
For 1.1.
1.1a, I think it's on page 78.
Yeah, okay.
1.1a, just to delete the word colour-bond.
We'll take that under consideration, but at least we know what you're talking about. Is that the only?
Yes, that's
you had?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And the reason for that was that you have a better choice.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um,
Did you have a question, Councillor Gardner?
just on that, so if 1.8, take out colour bond, whatever.
Put your
Oh, sorry. And underneath it says a colour and finish materials schedule.
Is that correct?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, is it? No, it's probably Phil.
Oh,
Does that cover off?
Yeah, that's a requirement for an updated set of plans, so
Yeah.
I'm comfortable having a condition that just says 1.8 metre fence.
Yep.
And then that
A colour and finish.
material
Okay.
be provided that covers the fence as well,
Yeah.
and we can deal with it that way.
That's right.
thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks.
Okay, the next person who wanted to speak.
Good evening, I'm Andrea Dijkstra. Thank you for the opportunity of speaking a few words regarding our subdivision application PA 27/2019 at 83 Blackley Road, Castlemaine, and my son-in-law and daughter's application PA 26/2019 at 85 Blackley Road. I understand that after advertising, an objection was received, resulting in the need for consideration by Council at tonight's meeting. Before we purchased the property, we conferred with the Shire's planners on numerous occasions and were assured that the property, situated in a low-density residential zoning, could potentially be subdivided down to 1 acre lots without sewer and half-acre lots with sewer access. We subsequently chose to sewer the land and extended the line 250 metres up Blackley Road at considerable expense. In 2017, we successfully subdivided the property into 2 lots. The northern lot of 2.5 acres, incorporating the original house we sold to our son-in-law and daughter. At the end of 2018, our family applied for further, that was the son-in-law and daughter, applied to further subdivide their property, leaving them on 1 acre and providing a new 1.5 acre lot behind their block with battle access. The entrance was specifically designed to preserve existing vegetation and blend with the current landscape. The entrance design can be seen on page 45 in tonight's agenda. A cut of over 2 metres below the level of the northern boundary was created in the block so that any house built there would not be obtrusive or even visible to the nearest neighbours approximately a quarter of a kilometre away. Both lots are considerably larger than the requirements for sewer blocks in the LDR zoning. We simultaneously applied to divide off half an acre on the larger lot where our home will be sited. This was done so that in the long term we would not have too extensive a property to maintain. We're fortunate to have an area on the block of over 2 acres with some beautiful native vegetation. We aim to preserve and improve the space by continuing to eradicate blackberries and gorse and other noxious vegetation we inherited when we purchased the property. We intend making this section mobile so that it can be maintained, kept free of combustible material, and utilised and enjoyed by family, friends and fauna alike. The road reserve at the back of the property and the 20 metre setback on each side of the waterway will for all time remain an unspoiled wildlife corridor. We cleared the Winter Creek and good-sized dam on the property of blackberries and gorse. Officials from North Central Catchment Management Authority have visited the block at our request, and we intend to follow their guidelines for the well-being of the waterway and dam and its inhabitants, and also for the quality of excess water leaving the property and entering
Your time's just about up.
Barker Creek. Having complied with requirements relating to subdivision of low-density residential land and having identified a shortage of larger residential lots in town, we would appeal to Council to view our application for planning permits favourably. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, could I have a motion to resume standing orders? Councillor Henderson, Councillor Neiman, thank you. Councillor Gardner, do you need a hot drink?
No, I'm right.
No.
Thank Thank you.
I'm looking after it.
Turning now to page 11, Assemblies of Councillors, which lists all the many meetings we've had. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Do I have a motion? Councillor Neven?
I'll move the council notes the records for the assemblies of councils as required under the Local Government Act.
Thank you. Seconder, thank you. Councillor Alcassa. Any objections, queries, comments? No, that being the case, I declare that motion carried. Okay, now turning to page 18, we have the Mount Alexander Planning Scheme Review. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to propose the following motion. The Council adopt the Mount Alexander Planning Scheme Review 2019 prepared by Ethos Urban, clarifying two ambiguities on pages 39, paragraph 5.2, and page 45, paragraph 7.3. In each case, the Minister did exercise his discretion to reject the Planning Scheme Amendment C36, in so doing not accepting the advice of two separate planning panels. That's part one. Part two, send the adopted review to the Minister for Planning in accordance with the requirements of Section 12B of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. And three, Council notes that the review will inform a revised strategic planning work programme which will come before Council in time to be considered in the next budget. And four, notes that any subsequent changes to the planning scheme will require community consultation and Council resolutions.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, you do, Mayor. I'll
Thank
second that
you.
motion.
Councillor Lesser. Are there any objectors? No? Do you wish to speak to this, Councillor Henderson?
Certainly, Mayor. This piece of work is required of each council during their term to review their planning scheme. And so this is my third experience of this process. It's always a bit later than you think it's meant to be. I think the idea originally in the Local Government Act this would happen in the first term of new council, which is why it has a rather strange requirement that you include the council plan in the... never mind. But apart from that, it is as usual cropping up rather towards the end or the latter part of this council term. This, I think, is a commendable document. I think it's it makes good reading. It has a very concise and thorough review of our planning scheme. It is, according to the report we had before, it is policy neutral. It's not attempting to do anything radical with our planning scheme. Keeping the boat steady, but at the same time pointing out significant pieces of work that need to be done. In fact, setting out an implementation plan, which is really setting up the work plan for our strategic planning department for the next few years, which hence the parts 3 and 4 of my motion. The piece that I was in part 1, where I want to just clarify the wording, is a particular issue of the Tarrant Valley decision made by the Minister, which some people might remember in the past, where a large parcel of land near Malden was, there was an attempt to change the planning scheme to make that into a rural residential place, a significant development outside of Malden. There was a lot of support, there was also a lot against. There was concerns about bushfire safety. The original planning panel approved it. However, and so the document sat on the Minister's desk waiting for approval, and then we had a small matter of something called Black Saturday occurred, and so that threw all the normal rules about bushfire safety up in the air, and we had to wait for the Royal Commission findings before anything could be redone. So the whole consideration had to happen again. First of all, the Minister called for a new bushfire study. That was done, but then the Minister decided, by this time we've got a new Minister for Planning, decided we needed a whole new planning panel that he would call, we pay, he would call, that would consider all aspects of this proposed planning scheme amendment to allow the residential, rural residential development. That planning panel, on its third expert fire, bushfire consideration, excellent consultants report, received recommendation from the experts that in fact it would be alright to put residential development there, that it would be within the limits of safety for bushfire. However, again, the report sat on the new minister's desk for a long time, and eventually he decided to override the advice from the expert panel and reject the amendment. So the development did not go ahead. That's the prerogative of the minister, but I just wanted to have that clarified in this excellent document. It doesn't say otherwise, but it's just a bit ambiguous in the nature of flight comment on the decision. I'm not being so polite. Thank you. Oh, and I'm sure my fellow councillor Lesser will speak on the wonders of this great document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Lesser.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, planning. It's perhaps the most difficult area council has to deal with. And from a community's point of view, it can be a very frustrating process with perplexing outcomes. Now, in some ways, I'm sort of approaching or addressing this to the community as well as my fellow councillors with this snapshot that we've been provided. Now, the community at large needs to have confidence with our planning processes. Now, the planning area of council has two main arms, a strategic arm and a statutory arm, and this report focuses on the strategic side of planning. Now, as fellow councillor has pointed out, under the Planning and Environment Act, the council needs to review its planning scheme within the terms of each council, which is what we're doing. And the audit review was undertaken by an external authority to provide a sort of an external perspective. Now, as the councillor pointed out, the review was not about introducing new policy or strategies, but rather how the planning scheme was performing and to identify areas of further work and improvements. And there was also a targeted community consultation with a neutral approach. Now, there's a total of 47 recommendations were made, and Council's Strategic Planning Unit, in discussion with Council, as we've heard at a previous briefing, have produced an implementation plan. Sure, there's going to be further detailed briefings on specific issues identified in the review. And the recommendations that I understand will define the effectiveness of the Mount Alexander planning scheme over the next 4 years. So whether we're here or not then, but anyhow, it'll be other councillors. Now, I found something really interesting on page 14, and I think this is, for me, one of the highlights of this report. And these are the demographic statistics in Mount Alexander Shire, and there was some mention before. Anyway, it says we've got a population of approximately 19,300 people, and the percentage of our young people aged 0 to 15 is about 16.1%, and the average in Victoria is 19.4%. And we have a significantly larger percentage of elderly residents, 65 plus, and that's 24%. So anyway, so the age profile of the Shire is largely comprised of people within the 40 to 79 year age bracket. So when we had this talk about the early years, I think some of this needs to sort of come out, which is what this report is doing. And it also goes on to talk about the family makeup in the Shire. So these are important statistics. Now, for me, it's noted as you read through the report that some of the recommendations have already been dealt with or already included in the Strategic Planning Unit's work program, which is great. And the external report is great reading, as Councillor Henderson pointed out, and really outlines the state of play in regards to planning. Now, I found a really interesting aspect of the report on page 27, and that was to do about climate change. And I know that there's been some community discussion of late regarding Council's approach, But I'd like to point out to the community that there is a Victorian Climate Change Act, and there is a review re land use and planning taking into account natural hazards in our Shire. And this includes heat waves, flooding, severe storms, bushfire, as you mentioned, and drought. Yes, I'm going to be cut up, I'm nearly finished. P.S. No, yes you can. Like all reports, the report themselves are not perfect, and I see on page 24 of the report under the growth plan that the area of Mackenzie's Hill is not mentioned. But overall, I'm happy to support the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lesser. And just a reminder, the mover of a motion has 6 minutes, anyone else has 3 minutes. So I can cut you off, I'm just really polite, because it was a very interesting report and I thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to speak to this?
You've only got 3 minutes.
No? In which case I declare the motion carried, and I'm really pleased to see this. It's long been a contention of councillors that we are lacking in some really important strategic work, and unfortunately strategy costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time, so it's going to take us a while to get this done, and that's why we have to have that consideration as part of our next budget. So thank you to councillors, thank you to staff, it's been great. Okay, moving on to page 22, Stanley Park North. I'm assuming, Councillor Cordy, that we have a recommendation.
Yes, I have a motion, Mayor, that Council adopt the Stanley Park North Draft Master Plan.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Neiman. Are there any objections? No. Councillor Cordy, would you like to speak to this?
Just briefly, Mayor. Stanley Park is it's a lovely area in Harcourt, and it's the future site of our new playground. So we're looking forward to that. This master plan is just tidying up some issues around the planning for the new playground and the use of the site generally, but it is a lovely spot, and the community is very excited about the new playground. One of the things is, of course, in Stanley Park we've got our memorial park there, and I think it's a very important focus for the community on days like Anzac Day. So it is a wonderful area in Harcourt, and certainly appreciated by all the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you wish? No, you don't wish to speak to it. Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this?
Just to say, very pleased to see this coming for us. It's been a long haul for the Harcourt community. They have fought long and hard for this to be the site of their park, against some very serious opposition within the council, not the elected council, I must say, but previous iterations of staff at quite senior levels have felt that this was anywhere but the place to have a park. So very pleased to see that our current administration has been working positively and fruitfully with the community, and we've got this beautiful plan drawn up by, I'm very proud to say, a very talented Elphinstone resident, so in her professional capacity, I should say.
Yes. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? No? That being the case, I declare the matter carried, and we look forward to Councillor Cordy doing the first lap around the revised. So thank you. And playing on the swings.
I'll take a photo.
Moving now to page 29, the land exchange agreement. Councillor Neiman, you wish to move as printed?
As printed, the council authorise the chief executive officer to sign the common seal of land exchange agreement between Mr. J.O. Brasso, Welshman Tree, and council.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gardner, thank you. Any objections? No? That being the case, would you like to comment?
Yes, I would. In old gold mining country, this is a constant problem, not a problem, but an occurrence. There's no need to go looking for boundaries that are not right, they'll come and find you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, did you wish to speak?
I mean, it's just been a long-standing issue that is going to be resolved.
Anyone else wish to comment?
I think we should say that this sort of issue lies all over the joint in the Shire. However, the matter comes to a head when someone wants to sub land and discovers that what they thought was a public road on the edge of their property is actually meant to be going through their property, and where the public road is actually part of their property. So you have to sort these things out because, yeah, in legal terms, you can't leave them as informal as they have been for many decades or a century. Yeah. So, of course, I do notice the council's picking up the legal costs of all this, even though maybe we have nothing to do with the original error, but there you are, we're just being magnanimous in this case.
Thank you. I declare the matter carried. Common sense prevails. Okay, moving now to page 34, the first of the Blakely Road planning permits. Councillor, we have a recommendation. Do I have a motion? Councillor Henderson.
As printed now.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, what? Yes, I'll second it.
It's our ward. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lesser. Are there any objections? No? Would you wish to speak to this, Councillor Henderson?
I think this is a pretty straightforward case. It is, as our speaker said, in a low density residential zone. It's not a farm zone. It's quite reasonable that this subdivision should take place. I noticed that the recommendations include taking care of the fact that there will be loss of native vegetation, and therefore offsets must be provided according to the rules set out by the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. The Golden Murray Water is making sure that there will be construction techniques for sediment pollution control, etc. It is a sewage block, I believe, so we don't have any wastewater management on site to deal with. And all the usual, and of course bushfire management plan there, so it all seems it's quite reasonable, and I think there's no reason why we should not approve this.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Lesser? No. Does anyone else wish to speak to this? There being no objections, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next Blakely Road one. On page 47, we have a recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. As printed?
As printed there.
Thank you. Seconder?
Yes, Mayor, I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Lesser. Do you want to just replay the speech or just refer to it?
No, I think it's pretty much the same. It's very interesting to hear the provenance of from the speaker before, that it is in fact a family affair rather than just two neighbours jumping in and thinking, oh, it's a good idea, I'll copy you. And I like the idea. I mean, once land is sold, there's not too much you can do about it, though I do notice the building envelope on the larger block is towards the road and leaving that substantial amount of native push behind, and wish it all the best of luck well beyond our lifetimes, because it is precious to us, and especially in close proximity to human habitation to enrich our environment in such an area. So I think it's a very worthy project.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lesser?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Cordy?
Just a comment, Mayor. When we're briefed on these subdivisions, it looked from the as though from the information that was before us that there'd been clearing of native vegetation on one of these two Blakely Road subdivisions before planning was approved, and I think people just need to be very careful about that, because there are very harsh penalties for that sort of thing. So people got ideas about clearing blocks before they have necessary planning approval. I would caution them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy, and that's not an objection, that was just a comment, is that right?
Correct.
Thank you. There being no objections, I declare the motion carried. Okay. Moving on to... Can we move on, or do you wish to have... No? Okay, thank you. Moving on to page 60, Eureka Street, Chewton. I have a recommendation. Do I have a motion?
Sure.
Am I doing all the planning tonight for the
No.
Are you moving it?
Yes.
Councillor Lesser, are you moving this?
Yes, I will move the recommendation as written, that the council issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the subdivision into 8 plots.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Neiman? Got it before you, Councillor Henderson? I don't think that worries you. Okay, is there, excuse me, are there any objections? Councillor Lesser, do you wish to speak?
Just briefly, Mayor, I'm looking at page 74 and it says the alternate options. Council could refuse the application, however, it is a view of the statutory planning unit that the subdivision should be approved based on its compliance with a planning scheme, and that there are no reasonable grounds for refusal. And as I will be chatting a little bit later on about planning again, I have complete confidence in our planning officers, and therefore I think that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Anyone else wish to speak? No? No, that be...
I think I should say it's a substantial development on Eureka Street, beyond the railway line, so it is getting out there towards the edge of town. However, it is still in the township zone, with sewerage. So, yes, I mean, this is what's happening. Shute is becoming a destination.
Absolutely.
And people are looking for smaller lots, and it's to be hoped that this will provide more modest possibilities for development. Those people who can't afford big lots and are looking for something small. So, yeah, I approve. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else? No debate? What are we doing tonight? We're not debating. So that must mean we've got really good reports. Thank you. That being the case, I declare the motion carried. Now moving on to planning application, change of use of existing commercial building to a dwelling and external alterations at 11 Union Street, Castlemaine, on page 78. We do have a recommendation. Do we have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Gardner.
Good on you, yes.
Yeah, motion has printed, but the amendment as requested for 1.1A, remove colour bond.
Will I have a seconder?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Councillor Lesser. Any objections? Just checking, Mr Taylor, you got that amendment? Yes. Okay, do you wish to speak to this, Councillor Gardner?
No, not a lot really. It's just converting a existing commercial dwelling into what probably will be a 3-bedroom residence, and the request for amendment was really, I think, is a minor amendment on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. Councillor Lesser, did you wish to speak?
Yes, just briefly, Mayor. I like infill development and reusing and adapting to our existing building stock, and I think that this is in a tight tight sort of situation in the middle of town. And again, so we don't have any real grounds to refuse the application, and I think it'll enhance just a great reuse of existing buildings. And I think that's really important. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? That being the case, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. So that's the planning applications considered, and we now move on to page 94, the review of instruments of delegation for planning unit staff.
I'll move that one, Mayor.
Sorry, I was getting ready, but thanks for getting excited, so you can do it.
So, what do you move, Councillor Lesser?
I move that we accept the recommendation as printed that Council adopts the proposed delegation under Schedule 6, instrument of delegation to members of Council staff or planning unit staff members, and the other points that follow.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Gardner, thank you. Any objections? No? Okay. Councillor Lesser.
Thank you. I get 6 minutes.
Point of order, get going.
Okay, all right. This is about process and planning, as I sort of mentioned before. As a community, we all struggle with planning, and it affects us all. And as a council, we need to get the process right. Now, the planning department historically has had delegation to make decisions, and this is about tweaking the process. Now, the proposal, as I read, will improve the decision-making process, increase efficiencies, and build the capacity of the whole planning team, and reduce the workload of individual officers. Now, there are internal processes that will provide appropriate oversight, and all decisions will adhere to our planning scheme. Now, I reckon that our community would welcome the reduction of planning bottlenecks and unnecessary time delays. And our current approach is not as efficient as it could be. There's delays in determinations, administrative matters, delays, and this helps to delay planning permit applications. Now, while Council regularly determines planning applications, as you've seen tonight, decisions made by Council are given effect under delegation. Because currently, the community may not be aware that our senior council officers have been delegated powers to approve and refuse all permit matters under the Act. Now, further to that above, which has not been noted, is that in this particular report, the council have been given a briefing regarding planning applications determined by councillors, and the aim of this will be to further improve the planning process. And the findings and recommendations of this review will come before us, I guess, as soon as possible, so that the community can be fully informed of all the changes. Now, one final comment on a human, emotional level, that there is a trust between councillors and council officers, and we all work together to achieve a common goal. And this, I think, makes for efficiencies and builds community confidence. No, we don't always agree on planning matters, although we seem to have tonight. And I really want to stress that Council does not and cannot make any decisions on planning applications in councillor briefing sessions, but only at councillor meetings. Now, I'm looking forward, and I guess we all are, to move forward in a partnership, and that's why I'm supporting the recommendations outlined in the review of the instruments of delegation for the planning unit staff. Simple. Let's get on with it and improve.
Thank you very much. Now, I've forgotten who seconded that. It's you. Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Would you like to speak?
Yes.
Oh, well, I've only got 3 minutes. No, Max stole most of my thunder. I think that any system that is becomes more efficient is a good thing, and planning, I think, particularly for the Shire and as councillors, is a major driver of growth, and I think it's a good thing.
Thank you.
And I look forward to the
potentially changes in the process that we discussed.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? No. In which case I declare the matter carried. I thank the officers very much for their thorough review of this and echo our fellow councillors' comments about improving efficiency, and this is a drive that we're trying to do across many areas of our operations. Okay. Turning now to delegates' reports. Councillors, does anyone else have a delegate's report? No, but the Chief and I do. So, Mr. Fassad, would you like to lead us through?
Thanks very much, Mayor. As usual, our reports tend for councillors' consideration on what we've been doing in the last month or so. I, of course, haven't been here for that full month. And thank you for affording me a week off last week. And thank you to Lisa Knight, our Director, for standing in my place for me and attending to quite a number of the matters that are on this list, as well as many other things. The one that I wanted to point out, Mayor, was you'll notice I think there's at least 5 instances on there where you'll see meetings between myself, Castlemaine Health, Castlemaine District Community Health, and various state government people in relation to the health and wellbeing precinct. That is a sign that things are increasing, activity is increasing on that project generally. There is a strong keenness to get on with the master planning process for that, but also part of what those meetings was about, councillors, was making sure that the state fully understood what our agenda as a community is for this project, represented currently by yourselves, the board and the CEO of Castlemaine Health, as well as the board and CEO of Castlemaine District Community Health, in that we want this to be something quite different from perhaps what the normal approach is to building a hospital, building a pool, building community health facilities and the like. It's a far more wide encompassing concept to do with health and wellbeing, a health and wellbeing precinct, which is a place that is welcoming for people of all ages, all abilities, and is a place that people want to come to with the opportunity there to perhaps get more from that visit than what they expected by being exposed to many more health and wellbeing initiatives that are all held in one place. So exciting to see things happening there. We've been pushing this for a long time, you and I particularly at that board level, and it's great to see things are starting to happen there, and that we are being heard by the very senior people in the Department of Health and Human Services, that this is not your average project. Thanks, Mayor.
Phew, thank you. It's been a big push on that one. The one I'd like to draw your attention to is that I spent last Friday morning with one of our home and community care, is that the right word? What's the right word?
Community wellbeing team.
Community wellbeing team, thank you. As she delivered Meals on Wheels. And it was a real eye-opener. I mean, I always had faith in our staff, and it was more absolutely reinforced about how much she knew about the people that she was caring for. It wasn't just about delivering a meal, it was about delivering a contact. And lots of things happened in the 5 to 10 minutes that we were speaking. And part of, for me, there's a lot of concern about the fact that the Commonwealth is changing its method of funding these services, and Victoria will be most impacted by the changes. And part of the whole frustration around that is we've still got no deadlines or no details about when those changes will happen. So all of our beautiful staff are doing all of this fabulous service in spite of knowing that there's a whole lot of uncertainty around it. And yet our residents so need this service. So we're rather hoping that all the work that our staff are doing, and it's magnificent work in cooperation with other councils, is going to make a difference so that that level of service can remain for our most vulnerable old people. Thank you. So going on to notices of motion. A notice of motion. Notice of motions? Go for it. Councillor Gardner.
Okay. Everyone's got a copy of that. So I'm moving a motion the council endorse the attached submission to the Legislative Assembly's Planning and Environment Committee into the Tackling Climate Change, and agrees submission should be forwarded to Marie Edwards and Lisa Chesters and as our local members.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Henderson, are there any objections? Thank you. Do you wish to speak to this, Councillor Gardner?
Yeah, why not? I'm assuming my fellow councillors have read it, and this will become our official response to the current inquiry into tackling climate change being taken by the Victorian Government. I know in the community there is a diverse view of climate change, and I probably have a broad section of people who believe in it and those who don't. Some believe in science, some believe change is not man-made, just a normal cycle. But I think whatever your view, it is a good thing to reduce our emissions and to reduce pollution. I don't think anyone can argue with this. As noted in this response, this council has been doing a lot of work to reduce our emissions. We set a target for being carbon neutral by 2030, and we're doing this and working towards that. And we support a lot of great community groups and looking at our biggest problem, which is currently waste. We're a small shire in a broader context, and it's good we're showing leadership in this area. Much more needs to be done, and this needs to happen at the Victorian level and also the Australian Government level, but this is to the Victorian Government. And in it, we're asking the Victorian Government to look at areas of improving electricity, waste management, infrastructure and planning, and emergency management. I would just like to commend it to my fellow councillors and send it into the inquiry, and I note that we've made an offer to present at it if requested.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Henderson, do you wish to?
Certainly, Mayor. It is an impressive document, this. 13 pages, 12 and some references. So it's been very well put together. I see your hand in it, Mayor, as well as input from our officers. But it's a great, more than a summary of what we've been up to and how we view the importance of what our state and federal governments have done and also what we need to do. We'll note on page 2 there, in setting the background, it does say that the first dot point is that the CO2 parts per million level has now reached over 40 parts per million. That would be quite impressive, would be in a severe ice age maybe. I think that there's a typo, should say 400 parts per million. We do need some greenhouse effect to keep us warm. I will actually note, Mayor, that we're reviving we found a recording of a Taradale Primary School musical production put on in the early 1980s called Children Against the Increased Greenhouse Effect. And the staggering thing is that 30 years later that script is spot on. And we're thinking of releasing it and sending it off to the federal government. It's got some great songs in it, like Dob in a Dumper. I'm sure Mr. Shibiswick will know that one. Anyway, so just looking through this document, fantastic document. Waste, I will have to read this paragraph. Waste is our council's largest greenhouse gas emitter. Like many small rural councils, we lack the resources and levers to identify and implement solutions. Don't we all know right at the moment? Through the waste groups, we can get advice to do joint tendering, but without a significant move at the national and state level to a circular economy, we can't reduce the problem. We have sought a container deposit scheme so far without success. We look forward to the state's circular economy plan. That's a very nice way of putting this. Get your fingers out and do something about this waste rather than pretending it will go away as long as we hide it, because it won't, and it's getting worse every time our waste is picked up, or rather our so-called recycling, which is no longer got anywhere to go. Something has to be done. It goes on. I could pick out lots of good bits, but I know my fellow councillors I've already read it, so, but I do rather enjoy the last bit where we're responding to questions from this august committee, and he wants to know about interstate and international best practice models that could be implemented. And I do like the response which says that state government should not be seeking best practice examples. Best practice is a response to well-documented and known situations where answers are obvious. It is not a case of best practice in this case. There is no best practice. The ground rules are changing, the situation is changing all the time. Best practice applies to stable situations, and it says here the state government should look for emerging practice. So it is nice to just educate these people while you're at it. So great document. I hope it gets read by people. Hope that it has some influence. It should have. It's brilliant. And you know, we deserve it, because even though we're a small council, we represent a very passionate community. Our students are planning to go off on their next strike. And
20th of September.
20th of September. Will the whole council be there? I'm not quite sure. But the council got a strike, I was asked this morning on the local radio. I thought, oh, you know, that's something different. But yeah, so this is a worthy document.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? No, that being the case, thank you. I declare the motion carried. There will be no urgent notice of motion. I declare the meeting closed at 7:42. Thank you all.